Okay, we're ready to go. Third step prayer there, Rob.
On page 63, everybody, my name is Rob Kay, and I am a recovered alcoholic. God, I offer myself
God,
to thee,
I offer myself to thee
to
to
build with
build
me
with me
and do with
and
me
to
as thou
do
wilt.
with me.
Relieve me of the bondage of self, that I may better do thy will. Take away my difficulties, that victory over them may bear witness to those I would help of thy power, thy love, and thy way of life. May I do thy will always.
Perfect. Thank you, Rob. All right, we let's just go in here. Are on page 22. Let's go ahead and go up one paragraph where it says, "Why does he behave like this?" And we'll get that. We'll get it started.
Okay, page 22, everybody. Middle of the page. Why does he behave like this? If hundreds of experiences have shown him that one drink means another debacle, with all its attendant suffering and humiliation, why is it he takes that one drink? Why can't he stay on the water wagon? What has become of the common sense and willpower that he still sometimes displays with respect to other matters?
Yeah, we've talked about this at this point. We've got the malady of the mind that kind of inserts itself there. So what we're really talking about is the fact that people are successful in so many other ways and unsuccessful in controlling or even resisting and or not drinking at all. They are having a problem with that, and what in this case, this particular question is really from the outside looking in, and the misunderstandings and not being educated with regard to the fact that the malady of the mind can kick in and cause you to take that first drink, no matter how much you don't want to take that first drink. And knowing that you're well on your way to another debacle, as it says. I can say with my own experiences that my first sip of a drink, this overwhelming rush of guilt and remorse and regret would just fall over me. And it was so demoralizing to be taking that first drink and then knowing that it's going to lead to, somebody knowing and somebody saying something, and or me doing or saying something that I shouldn't or wouldn't normally, and what a mess it would cause. And here's kind of another kind of thinking here is that, with their own experience has shown that one drink means another debacle, and it's all attendant suffering and humiliation. Well, it's the suffering of others and the humiliation of yourself. So why is it? Well, we will come to know it as the malady, and the fact is that there are other things in life that you make decisions on that you do quite well at, and there's this baffling feature of, so why is it that you can't make the right decision here? Rob?
Yeah, they're really gonna. They've already talked about the allergy, and they've really hammered home the allergy. So we understand the allergy, the phenomenon of craving, and from the doctor's opinion. Now they're going to start talk about, well, why do we take that first drink when we know what's going to happen? And this is the great part about this book. Why does he behave like this? Question. If hundreds of experiences have shown him that one drink means another debacle with all its attendant suffering and humiliation, why is it he takes that one drink? Question. Why can't he stay on the water wagon? Question. What has become of the common sense and willpower that he still sometimes displays with respect to other matters? Question. Do they expect us to answer that? No, this is what I love about this book. They'll answer it for us. And not only will they answer it once, they'll answer it again and again for us. And that's the beauty. If we don't get it the first time, well, once more. So, bottom of page 22, everybody. Perhaps there will never be a full answer to these questions. Opinions vary considerably as to why the alcoholic reacts differently from normal people. We are not sure why. Once a certain point is reached, little can be done for him. We cannot answer this riddle.
Okay, so we're kind of moving into it. I obviously they're talking about opinions and that type of thing, but we are going to learn about the malady and apply it to this particular feature of alcoholism, and that's where we're going to end up going here. It is baffling to most, and why that this happens. It certainly is something that even science hasn't been able to really put their finger on it specifically, but we will learn about the malady as we go along. Rob?
We know that while the alcohol keeps away from drink, as he may do for months or years, he reacts much like other men. We're equally positive that once he takes any alcohol whatever into his system, something happens both in a bodily and mental sense, which makes it virtually impossible for him to stop. The experience of any alcoholic will abundantly confirm this.
Yeah, and we're kind of talking a little bit about the allergy here. Once he takes it into his system, something happens. It's the allergy kicks in, and we get down that path of we can't stop until there's no more alcohol or we're passed out. This whole idea that this mind and body combination that does create this alcoholic is alive and well here. So the virtually impossible to stop. So that's really one of the big things about this, is that allergy that we've talked about so much already is really kicking in. And we've seen this time and again. Even I would say, if I asked for a show of hands, we'd be unanimous in the fact that most people would say, absolutely. Once I started drinking, I couldn't stop, and I wanted more and more and more. I know for a fact that the first sip of my drink, I was already thinking about my fourth drink. I knew I could get through 3 drinks in the evening without anybody saying or doing anything, but it was that fourth drink that I was trying to figure out how I was going to get. I was already down that path. I already knew I was going to go that far, and ultimately, as I would drink continuously, I would get farther and farther down that path beyond even the fourth drink. But that was something that was a feature of my alcoholism, was that fourth drink. I remember it like it was yesterday. I just wanted that fourth one because I knew that was going to get me to where I needed to be. So, Rob?
Well, once you got your fourth one, then the fifth one and sixth one were easy.
It was. It didn't matter. At that point, it didn't matter. And I lost all of my care and concern with regard to other people at that point. So
yeah.
You
could do you could drink the way you wanted to drink. And I like on the top, right at the top of page 23, the experience of any alcoholic will abundantly confirm this. We look back on our drinking careers, and I use the word careers because I use it in a book, because that's what we spent most of our time doing, is either trying to get alcohol, taking the alcohol, but it's the experience of these first 100 people, and that's what it's all come down to, their experience, So we look back on it, did I drink this way? Am I like these people? These observations would be academic and pointless if our friend never took the first drink, thereby setting the terrible cycle in motion. Therefore, the main problem of the alcoholic centers in his mind rather than his body. If you ask him why he started on that last bender, the chances are he will offer you any one of 100 alibis. Sometimes these excuses have a certain plausibility, but none of them really make sense in the light of the havoc an alcoholic's drinking bout creates. They sound like the philosophy of a man who, having a headache, beats himself on the head with a hammer so that he can't feel the ache. If you draw this fallacious reasoning to the attention of an alcoholic, he will laugh it off or become irritated and refuse to talk.
Yeah, I was one of those that became irritated and refused to talk because I was always so upset that somebody was poking at me about my drinking. I was thinking is if they just left me alone, I'd be fine. And the problem is that that's not the case, because obviously the havoc that I was creating, in my behavior my actions and my words, warranted somebody standing up and saying enough is enough. But anyway, back to the beginning of this paragraph, I think this first, couple of sentences are really, really good. And it's the observations would be academic and pointless if our friend never took the first drink. But therefore, so the allergy doesn't kick in until after you've taken that first drink. So if you don't take a drink at all, then you don't commit to the allergy doesn't kick in, and you are not experience the features of alcoholism. But we also know that the malady doesn't allow us that freedom. If we were able to not take that first drink, then we wouldn't be alcoholic in the first place. And the reasons for drinking, obviously, we've come up with 100 of them, or more, and they were either good for good reasons and or for bad reasons. We raise our hand and say, hey, I'm drinking because I just had a bad day at work, or I'm drinking because I had to celebrate a great thing that happened at work. I mean, just two examples right there that give people reasons to drink. And when you ask, why are you drinking and why are you drinking so much? Then obviously, as they say at the very end of this, with regard to the havoc that the alcoholic is creating, they either laugh it off, which is a defense mechanism, and or they just refuse to talk, or become irritable and do talk and just say terrible things. Rob?
Yeah, and these observations would be academic and pointless if our friend never took the first drink. So if we don't take the first drink, we don't set the phenomenon of craving off. Okay, so we've learned about that. So why do we take that first drink? And that's what this whole chapter is all about, is why do we keep taking it when we know what's going to happen? Okay, we come up with excuses, as Leo said, good day, bad day, rainy, sunny, it doesn't matter. I'm going to take a drink. And I can come up with any excuse I want in order to do it, So middle of the page 23. And remember, the main problem of the alcoholic centers in his mind rather than his body. Okay. Once in a while, he may tell the truth. And the truth, strange to say, is usually that he has no more idea why he took that first drink than you have. Some drinkers have excuses with which they are satisfied part of the time, but in their hearts, they really do not know why they do it. Once this malady has a real hold, they are a baffled lot. There is the obsession that somehow, someday, they will beat the game, but they often suspect they are down for the count.
Yeah, and this is one of the areas where we talk about an obsession. There's two obsessions. One of them is this one, and then is that somehow someday they will beat the game and be able to stop drinking and stay stopped on their own self-will and self-power. And obviously that's not going to happen. So just remember that this is an obsession that we're talking about, and it is that they were going to stop drinking and stay stopped under their own self-will, which they when it says that they often suspect they're down for the count, which means that they are not going to be able to do that as well. And we've said this before, you mentioned it, it's this baffling feature as to why this is happening to us. Once we, before we have the education that we're getting now by going through the book, we figure out that, we just don't know why it's happening. We can't answer honestly as to why we're doing it. I don't know why I'm doing it. I don't want to do it, but I'm doing it anyway. And here I am once again and again and again, doing it without reason. And it's that insanity that kicks in that we will talk about as well. Rob?
And that's why we come up with alibis, because we don't know why we keep doing it. So we come up with alibis in order to try to, explain it or to, I can't, I'm thinking of a word and I can't come up with it, but it gives us an excuse. How true this is, few realize. In a vague way, their families and friends sense that these drinkers are abnormal. But everybody hopefully awaits the day when the sufferer will rouse himself from his lethargy and assert his power of will.
And everybody is hoping for that. That it's just families and friends sense that their drinkers are abnormal. They sense it, but they don't really know why. They don't know how. They don't know what, and they're really baffled, just as baffled as everybody else. Although they, as uneducated as the non-educated alcoholic is, are basically full of, if you just don't take that first drink, why do you take the first drink? I don't have to, I can stop it whenever I want. Why can't you? And it's that confusion that comes in, and it really gets frustrating for both the alcoholic and the non-alcoholic when we're working through this. And everybody's in hopes that at some point there's going to be a break and they're going to be able to rise above this terrible activity that they're going through at this point in time. Rob?
Yeah, now that we've learned that about self-will and self-knowledge, will that solve the problem? No. But a lot of us think that I'm a good person, I've been able to control certain things in my life, I was able to stop smoking, I've been able to, curb my appetite when needed be. So my self-will and my self-knowledge, now that I know all these things, I'll be able to control it.
Right.
No. And so what's going to happen is that Bill is going to explain this later on in the book about self-will and self-knowledge, fear, all these certain things that we think will straighten us out. Right at the bottom of page 23, everybody. The tragic truth is that if a man be a real alcoholic, a happy day may not arrive. He has lost control. At a certain point in the drinking of every alcoholic, he passes into a state where the most powerful desire to stop drinking is of absolutely no avail. This tragic situation has already arrived in practically every case long before it is suspected.
Couple of things here is that when they say a real alcoholic, they've also used the word true alcoholic, which is on page 22, about halfway down. What I would say is that it is an alcoholic. So an alcoholic is an alcoholic. When we talk about it, it's, when somebody says a real alcoholic, a true alcoholic, or just an alcoholic, they're really kind of one and the same. Those are just some descriptors that they use in here. So I wanted to make that point at this point now. His lost control. He has lost control. Okay, it is no longer in his ability to stay stopped, and or not start in the first place. And no matter how much the desire to do so is, and they're there before even the alcoholic is willing to, before the alcohol really knows it, but also it's even way before the alcoholic is willing to admit it. And that's really a big hurdle to get over. And it's one that took me a long time to get to with regard to my drinking. I knew I had a problem, and I knew I needed to stop. There was a big part of me that didn't want to stop, but I knew I needed to. But I wouldn't admit it until way late in the game, when I finally got to the point that I knew that if I didn't, beyond what I'd already messed up. Another paragraph with italics there, Rob.
Yep. So it must be important, and I have it highlighted. But I'm just going to go back one sentence before I read it. This tragic situation has already arrived in practically every case long before it is suspected. Now, this squiggly writing. The fact is that most alcoholics, for reasons yet obscure, have lost the power of choice and drink. Our so-called willpower becomes practically non-existent. We're unable at certain times to bring into our consciousness with sufficient force the memory of the suffering and humiliation of even a week or a month ago. We are without defense against the first drink.
Excellent definition of the malady of the mind, this whole idea of the malady of the mind, this lost the power of choice, bring into our consciousness with sufficient force the memory of the suffering and humiliation of even a week or a month ago. I would even say of a day ago in some cases, most cases. And we are without defense against the first drink, that malady of the mind, that insanity that comes with it. Rob?
You know, we are unable at certain times. Every once in a while, we might be able to say, no, I'm not drinking today because of something else. But you know what? Tomorrow's another day. And am I going to be able to do it tomorrow and the day after and the day after that? My brain, as our friend Bill from New Jersey always says, our brain wants its candy and our brains will tell us anything in order to get it, to get us to change our mind. You know, no, it's okay. Don't worry about it. Today, you know, you just had a bad day, you know, or you had a bad case of, you know, whiskey, you know, the sun was too bright and too hot that day. You know, you were overcome with heat stroke instead of, you know, too much alcohol. You know, our brains will tell us anything in order to get us to take that first drink. You know, and as our friend Art always says, the melody's job is to get us to take that first drink. And once we've taken that first drink, its job is finished and it can go back to wherever it goes to and the allergy will take over. So please remember that. The almost certain consequences that follow taking even a glass of beer do not crowd into the mind to deter us. If these thoughts occur, they are hazy and readily supplanted with the old threadbare idea that this time we shall handle ourselves like other people. There is a complete failure of the kind of defense that keeps one from putting his hand on a hot stove.
Yeah, so there is that idea here. You know, I'm going to control it this time. I've got it. I'm aware of my problems. I'm aware of what goes on, and I'm going to control it this time. And obviously, that's a fallacy, but we still convince ourselves that that's going to be the case, and yet here we are, off to the races once we take that first drink. Rob?
And Leo, you hit the nail on the head when you said, I've got it. I can do it. By myself, you know, I can do it. And that's a great obsession of every alcoholic, that I can do it. I can't do it. And we're going to learn more about that. The alcoholic may say to himself in the most casual way, it won't burn me this time, so here's how. Or perhaps he doesn't think at all. How often have some of us begun to drink in this nonchalant way, and after the third or fourth, pounded out in the bar and said to ourselves, for God's sakes, how did I ever get started again? Only to have that thought supplanted by, well, I'll stop with the sixth drink, or what's the use anyhow?
Yeah, you give up. And at the end of that, you know, I'm going to drink 3 drinks and then I'm going to stop. Well, by the time you get to the third drink, your mind is altered. You are no longer the same person that you were before you took that first drink with regard to your ability to reason and to hold yourself accountable, if you will. And what happens is by the time you're at that third or fourth drink, you've basically said, I don't know how I got myself here with regard to the fact that I no longer have the ability to control myself, nor do I really want to. I've got to have more. And there you go. You're off to the races once again. And you basically say, oh, well, I've done it. Well, might as well just ride this one out. And obviously the bad things that happen. And at that moment, I would surmise that you really don't care because obviously the alcohol has altered everything in you, and it's no good. Rob?
When this sort of thinking is fully established in an individual with alcoholic tendencies, he has probably placed himself beyond human aid. And unless locked up, may die or go permanently insane. These stark and ugly facts have been confirmed by legions of alcoholics throughout history. But for the grace of God, there would have been thousands more convincing demonstrations. So many want to stop, but cannot.
There's a lot of people out there that really want to stop drinking but can't do it, and they don't understand why they can't. And at the same time, they're in that kind of really bad place where it's I think that there's some fear. There is this relentless feeling of completely no control at all, and with no explanation. It's really a fearful place to be. And we are talking about here, either the person is locked up or they may die. Obviously, alcoholism kills people all the time, unfortunately, and that's the seriousness of this whole thing that we're talking about. And that's where we are. I just lost my train of thought there, Rob. I apologize.
Hey, no problem. But the most, to me, one of the most important lines there is so many want to stop, but cannot. They want to, but just don't know how. Here we come, more squiggly writing. There is a solution. Almost none of us like the self-searching, the leveling of our pride, the confession of shortcoming, which the process requires for its successful consummation. But we saw that it really worked in others, and we had come to believe in the hopelessness and futility of life as we had been living it. When therefore we were approached by those in whom the problem had been solved, there was nothing left for us but to pick up the simple kit of spiritual tools laid at our feet. We have found much of heaven, and we have been rocketed into a fourth dimension of existence of which we had not even dreamed.
Wow. So this is a brighter paragraph. I mean, there is a solution, and they say that with an emphasis with regard to the italicized writing. We talk about steps, the steps, and we're going through a few of them that they've mentioned here. Self-searching and leveling of our pride and the confession of our shortcomings, which the process requires for a successful consummation. And we're talking about steps 4 and 5 as much as anything, and that we saw that it really worked in others. Obviously, when we were approached by those with regard that had solved the problem, there was nothing left for us to do but to, pick up that simple kit of spiritual tools and laid at our feet. That's step 12, being given to us, not us going out and doing it at this point, but this is an example of us receiving a step 12. And once that this has happened, you have found much of heaven, and we have been rocketed into a fourth dimension of existence. It's amazing once you've broken the problem and accepted a spiritual being, and had that experience and allowed that higher power to enter into you and give you that inner strength that you have to use in order to be able to stop drinking, stay stopped, and fully recover. Rob?
Few things here to really point out. When therefore we were approached by those in whom the problem had been solved, we approach other people. Why do we approach other people? Because we have been given this solution. It's up to us to give it to other people, to help them find a way out. Okay. Also, there was nothing left for us but to pick up the simple kit of spiritual tools laid at our feet. We have a box of tools. And as my friend Bill from New Jersey always says, I need power tools. Regular tools just don't cut it for me. I need power tools. And it's up to us to pick them up and to use those tools when needed. What tools do we have? Well, we're going to find out later on. We have the sick man prayer. We have the fear prayer. We have a whole bunch of different prayers. We ask when unsure and in doubt. We pause when agitated or unsure. We have all these tools that we're going to learn about. It's up to us to use them when needed, to know which tool to pick up. Do I need a screwdriver instead of a hammer? Do I need a crowbar or do I need a hammer? Different tools that we're going to be taught about. Okay. So we need to pick them up and use them. It's up to us. Remember, we used to get a sense of ease and comfort from having a few drinks. Now we have to replace that ease and comfort with something else. And what do we replace it with? Our higher power. The great fact is just this and nothing less, that we have had deep and effective spiritual experiences which have revolutionized our whole attitude towards life, toward our fellows, and towards God's universe. The central fact in our lives today is the absolute certainty that our Creator has entered into our hearts and lives in a way which is indeed miraculous. He is commenced to accomplish those things for us which we could never do by ourselves.
Absolutely. I highlighted this paragraph with regard to that, and that is that we have a deep and effective spiritual experience which have revolutionized our whole attitude towards life. So that is beyond just the alcoholism. It covers everything, and toward our fellows and towards God's universe. It's that opening of the mind and the heart. It's allowing this higher power in, and it's expected that you use this throughout all of your life, not just in your work with regard to your recovery. Once your higher power has entered into your hearts and lives in a way in which indeed is miraculous, it's like all things become easier. Not necessarily, when I say easier, they still are difficult, but they're just not as difficult in some cases. It's something that is quite, well, I'll just use the word they use, miraculous. It's amazing once you've let it happen. Rob?
If you're seriously alcoholic, as we were, we believe there is no middle of the road solution. We were in a position where life was becoming impossible. And if we had passed into the region from which there is no return through human aid, we had but two alternatives. One was to go on to the bitter end, blotting out the consciousness of our intolerable situation as best we could, and the other to accept spiritual help. This we did because we honestly wanted to, and we're willing to make the effort.
Yeah, willing to make the effort. That is a big part of this, is that you actually make the effort. And we're talking about people that were as seriously alcoholic as they weren't, as we are, and they weren't once were. So these are people that have beat the game and have accepted a spiritual life, and especially where they were things were becoming impossible. And when we talk about no middle of the road, there's no controlled kind of drinking. There's no, I'm going to just drink 2 drinks per day and that's going to fix it, kind of thing. There's no middle of the road kind of thing where we only accept some of the steps, not all of the steps. You have to kind of embrace the entire program to get the actual solution here. So, in a couple of different ways, there's really no middle of the road solution. Not controlled drinking, nor a pick and choose of the steps that we want. You have to do it all. Rob?
Okay. Now we're going to get into the story of Roland Hazard. A certain American businessman had ability, good sense, and high character. For years, he had floundered from one sanitarium to another. He had consulted the best-known American psychiatrist. Then he had gone to Europe, placing himself in the care of a celebrated physician, the psychiatrist Dr. Young, who prescribed for him. Though the experience had made him skeptical, he finished his treatment with unusual confidence. His physical and mental condition were unusually good. Above all, he believed he had acquired such a profound knowledge of his inner workings of his mind and its hidden spring that relapse was unthinkable. Nevertheless, he was drunk in a short time. More baffling still, He could give himself no satisfactory explanation for his fall.
Yeah, it's the baffling feature of alcoholism, obviously. Never ever fall for this idea that relapse is unthinkable. Even in those that have recovered, it is still a possibility. So just keep your spiritual life strong, and that is great defense against drinking. Doing the work with other alcoholics is a great defense, but never fall for the fact that relapse was unthinkable. And with Roland coming out of this, he thought he could, now he's got self-knowledge. So with that knowledge, he thinks that his self-will and self will actually control and not find himself drinking. But it's time and again, and this is a great example of where self-will and self-knowledge don't work.
Yeah, Roland Hazard had lots of money, could go see the greatest minds in the world. 1926, he goes to Carl Jung, spent about 6 weeks there, left and was drinking again. Went back in 1931 and saw Jung again. Then became a member of the Oxford group, found spirituality, and was able to carry the message to Ebby. Ebby then carried it to Bill. Bill carried it to Dr. Bob. And then it's been carried on to me. So we keep carrying the same message over and over, So he returned to this doctor whom he admired and asked him point blank why he could not recover. He wished above all things to regain self-control. He seemed quite rational and well balanced with respect to the problem. Yet he had no control whatever over alcohol. Why was this?
Yeah, he's obviously baffled. He's trying to find some answers here, and as we're going to read on here, we'll find out a little bit more about what's going on. But he really wants to regain this self-control, and we're going to find that that's just not possible without that spiritual experience. Rob?
And that's what it's all about. Is he's trying to do it by himself. Self will be able to control this thing, and this is what these stories and these case studies are all about. Is that in Bill's story, we learned to fear, sobered Bill up for a short period of time. When he first went into Towns Hospital, he talked to Dr. Silkworth and he learned about the allergy, the phenomenal craving. Self-knowledge would fix him this time. Okay. Now Roland, here's another story. He's trying to do it, self-control. He begged the doctor to tell him the whole truth, and he got it. And in the doctor's judgment, he was utterly hopeless. He could never regain his position in society, and he would have to place himself under lock and key or hire a bodyguard if he expected to live long. That was a great physician's opinion.
So at the point in time there is that the physician is basically saying he's hopeless. There's nothing that can be done other than the fact that he would either be locked up or have a bodyguard that would get in the way of his drinking and not allow him to drink. That was what Dr. Jung had finally said to Roland with regard to his situation. Rob?
Now think about it. Here's Roland going to one of the most celebrated psychiatrists in the world, a man he has got respect for, and they're telling you you're hopeless. Let that sink in for a second. We have no cure for you. We have nothing. You're going to be locked up. You're going to end up in a sanitarium with all the crazy people. But this man still lives and is a free man. See, Bill never leaves us hanging. This is the beauty of Bill. He hits us with something really important and kind of depressing. But then, you know what? We have hope for you. Don't give up. Don't give up. There is hope. But this man still lives and is a free man. He does not need a bodyguard, nor is he confined. He can go anywhere on this earth where other free men may go without disaster, provided he remains willing to maintain a certain simple attitude.
And that attitude is that spiritual being, having had that spiritual experience and continuing to carry the message forward. It's the whole kind of approach to life that we've been talking about. Rob?
Yeah, I put a picture in the chat for anybody that wants to take a look at it. It's a picture of Roland on one side and a picture of Carl Jung on the other, which is similar to the picture behind me. Now, Roland went to see Dr. Jung in June 24th, 1926, and Roland's bank account showed an expense under travel of $5,000. And they're showing this that in today's money, that would be $72,000. Most of this money was used to pay Dr. Jung. Some of it was for his hotel, etc. But the majority of that money was used for Carl Jung.
Wow.
So that's a lot of money, you know. So that's how much Roland thought of Dr. Jung. And remember, provided he remains willing to maintain a certain simple attitude. And this is one of the problems that we have within the fellowship, is that we start the program, which is in this book. We start doing the steps. We start living by certain spiritual means, and then things get better and we stop doing it. And what happened? The obsession of the mind comes back and we start drinking again. Okay, or we don't complete all the steps. We only do a certain number of steps, thinking, okay, we're okay now. Oh, I don't have to make amends. You know, they don't need to be done. Everybody forgives me, and you know, anybody that I ever hurt, I don't need to apologize. They're just glad I'm gonna, you know, live a spiritual life, but they don't. Some of our alcoholic readers may think they can do with spiritual help. Let us tell you the rest of the conversation our friend had with the doctor. The doctor said, "You have the mind of a chronic alcoholic. I've never seen one single case recover where that state of mind exists to the extent that it does in you." Our friend felt as if the gates of hell had closed on him with a clang. He said to the doctor, "There are no exceptions." "Yes," replied the doctor, "there is. Exceptions to cases such as yours have been occurring since early times. Here and there, once in a while, alcoholics have had what are called vital spiritual experiences. To me, these occurrences are phenomena. They appear to be in the nature of huge emotional displacements and rearrangements. Ideas, emotions, and attitudes, which were once the guiding forces of the lives of these men, are suddenly cast to one side, and a completely new set of conceptions and motives begin to dominate them. In fact, I've been trying to produce some such emotional rearrangement within you. With many individuals, the methods which I employ are successful, but I've never been successful with an alcoholic of your description."
Yep. So a couple of things here. The doctor and he are having a conversation. When he talks about the chronic alcoholic, that's the same thing as saying as a real or true alcoholic, or just basic alcoholic. He's basically saying he's hopeless. This is kind of the beginning, not necessarily a true step one, but it is kind of coming to terms with the fact that you are in fact hopeless. And he does say that there are some exceptions out there, and it's that vital spiritual experience that people have that are hard to explain, but do work. This huge emotional displacement and rearrangement, it's a life-altering experience. It should change the way you look at life, the way you approach and actually exist within life in your community. So this whole idea, this kind of psychic change that happens is that the ideas, emotions, and attitudes, which were once the guiding force, which is that self-will, self-knowledge, needs to be cast aside, and then completely new set of conceptions and motives begin to dominate. And that is where we're trying to get to. Rob?
Yeah, and this is what moral psychology is all about too, is coming up with a whole different way of looking at things. Instead of being so selfish and self-centered, and thinking only about myself, start thinking about other people. And this is what, Dr. Young is trying to get through to Roland, is that basically you have to stop thinking about your old ideas. Okay, contempt prior to investigation. We come back to the spiritual experience, but with moral psychology is all about changing the way we think. Instead of thinking about myself all the time, I'm thinking about how I can help Jenny today. How can I help Pam? What can I do for Andrew? What can I do for Leo? How can I, make a small difference in Bill's life? How can I help people instead of thinking, what can I get from all these other people? What are you going to do for me today? Today, it's what am I going to do for you? It's a whole new way. Remember, we cast aside old ideas and a new set and conceptions come into our life. Upon hearing this, our friend was somewhat relieved, for he reflected that after all, he was a good church member. This hope, however, was destroyed by the doctor telling him that while his religious convictions were very good, in his case, they did not spell the necessary vital spiritual experience.
Yeah, and we're not talking about your strength of your religion and the zealousness and or the frequency of which you go to church. It's great that you have that, but what we're really talking about is something more spiritual. So there is a difference. There is a difference. Rob?
Yeah, huge. And we have to remember that when we read Dr. Bob's Nightmare, Dr. Bob went to the Oxford Group meetings for 2 years. 2 years he went with his wife to these meetings, and they couldn't spell the necessary change. Why? Because he couldn't relate to these people. There was something about it that he had difficulty with. Leo, I think that's a great place for us to stop today. You ready to bring in Bill?
Yep.
From New Jersey.
Hi, this is Bill, alcoholic from New Jersey. Good job today, guys. This is a good part of the book here. Basically, I think what Bill is doing here, before this, he already kind of explained the physical part. Now he's getting into the mental part. He's trying to show us what part of the problem is. It's our brain, our mind. In our mind makes us drink when we don't want to drink. Whatever you want to call it, an obsession, a malady, a mental insanity, whatever. The mental part is what makes us drink against our will. And that's where the main problem is. Because if we didn't have that, once we stopped drinking, or we ran out of money or whatever, and we slept it off, we wouldn't drink again. But something in our mind makes us drink when we don't want to drink. He's trying to show us the problem here. And that's what the problem is. The main problem is the mental part. And you can't have a solution if you don't know what a problem is. So then he's going to show us the solution to this mental part. And he basically told us on page 25, there is a solution. And basically that means you go through steps 4 through 9. That's what the solution is, to get rid of that mental part. And to keep the mental part away, you have to do 10, 11, and 12. So he's basically telling us there is a solution, and the solution is going through this course of action that's laid out in this book. That's what helps us get better. And he told us also there's no middle of the road solution. And middle of the road means no spirituality. It means you're trying to do it with human aid. You're using your willpower, your control, your choice. That doesn't work. If you're standing in the middle of the road, you're going to get run over. You got to get out of the middle of the road and get over to where the solution is. Because the solution is not in the middle of the road. Basically, that's what Bill's trying to tell us. Then he put Roland Hazard's story in here. What he's trying to show us here is this guy, Dr. Young, was one of the top psychiatrists in the world. And what did he say? He said that the alcoholics need a vital spiritual experience, which is basically the same thing that AA says. And the way that we get this vital spiritual experience is by going through the steps. That's what step 12 tells us. Having had a spiritual awakening as the result of these steps. We go through these steps and we have a spiritual awakening or a spiritual experience. They both do the same thing. One just happens quickly, one happens slowly. And that's basically what this doctor was trying to get across to Roland, that he needed to have a spiritual experience. Dr. Young knew what the answer was. He just didn't know how to get there. He didn't know how to bring it about. He knew what an alcoholic needed, but he didn't know how to do it. He was trying to use scientific and medical methods, and that wasn't working. And then when Roland went to the Oxford group, that's where he got the roadmap of how to get to the solution. And the reason that Roland's important, Roland carried the message to Ebby, and Ebby carried the message to Bill. So if Roland would have never got sober, we don't know if Ebby would have got sober. And if Ebby never got sober, he wouldn't have been able to carry the message to Bill. So Roland's a very important piece of the puzzle on how all of this stuff got done. Because without Roland, there probably would be no Ebby. And without Ebby, there probably would have been no Bill. And none of us would be here. So again, what Bill's trying to do here is trying to tell us what the solution is. The solution is to go through this course of action that's laid out in this book so that we can have a spiritual awakening or a spiritual experience that can nullify that mental part so that we don't have to drink against our will. And then if we want to keep it, we have to keep doing this. We have to practice what 10, 11, and 12 says. That's how we keep it. The first 9 steps help us get rid of it, and the last 3 steps help us to maintain it and keep it or grow in it, whatever you want to call it. That's pretty much all I got. Thanks a lot for letting me share.
Thank you so
Thank-
much, Bill.
Yep, thank you, Bill. And Bill has a big book study that runs on 11 a.m. Eastern time, 10 a.m. Central time, 4 p.m. in the UK. And so just as a reminder on Fridays that Bill does quite a great, it's actually a great big book study. All right, let's do the serenity prayer and then we will close things out.
God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and wisdom to know the difference.